Mr. Carter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. I think I don't doubt your intentions. I think you and I agree on the same thing. We want to lower drug costs. You didn't have the same experience that I had serving as a pharmacist for over 40 years, having to go to the counter to explain to the patient how much their medicine was and watch them make a decision between buying groceries and buying food and buying their drugs. I had that experience, and I know you didn't have that experience, but I have to tell you that I feel like that your promises fall flat. You and I, the last time we had the opportunity to speak, and I believe it may have been in the Budget Committee, I'm not sure, but nevertheless, we talked about the government price controls of the IRA, which I think is the very worst legislation that I have ever seen in my 10 years in Congress, my 10 years in the state legislature. It is nothing more than it is not negotiations, it's extortion. And I hope that the court cases are going to prove it to be just that. Already it's resulted, and I don't mean to get back into it again. We had this discussion last time because you say you think it's going to result in more cures, whereas the University of Chicago says it's going to result in 329 fewer cures in the next decade. Even CBO says it's going to result in fewer cures, yet you say it's going to result in more cures. I don't know how you justify that, but nevertheless, I'll move on for that because I want to talk about something else. And what I want to talk about is copay assistance and the fact that the copay accumulators are being used by the PBMs and that they are pocketing this money. And yet the courts made a decision and made a ruling that they struck down the rule that allows insurers to implement these harmful programs, but your department is defying that decision. And it's gone on record as saying you will not enforce the court decision. Now, earlier, the chair of this committee asked you about the PBM transparency rule, and you said, well, we're going to respect the court's decisions. How do you respect the court's decisions there, but you don't respect them here? How do you pick and choose which ones you're going to respect?
Congressman, first, thank you very much for the question, and you're right. Every once in a while, we may disagree, but I appreciate the questions that you ask. We will comply with the law. That's our obligation.
Why aren't you complying with this one then? Why are you allowing the PBMs to pocket this money instead of it going to the patients as it should go to the patients? Because you know what's happening with these copay accumulators. And you know what's happening with when they have these copay assistance cards. They're not honoring them. And they're pocketing that money, and then the patients are having to either pay their copay when they run out, or when they get up to their stopgap, then they're having to pay more.
And we are, as I said, first and foremost, I can assure you that we will comply with the law. What we want to make sure at the same time is we don't allow the Medicare program and Medicare beneficiaries to get gamed in the process and ultimately end up having to pay more out of pocket at the end of the day.
How are they getting gamed here if they are not able to use these copay assistance cards that the PBMs are pocketing it instead of passing it on to the patients? And the courts ruled that, but you're ignoring the courts, and you've even said we're not going to enforce it.
Well, I recognize what the courts ruled here. I recognize what they looked at, and they were looking at the facts that were before them. We have to make sure that we run the Medicare system so it works for all the 66 million beneficiaries that receive Medicare services. So what we want to make sure is that in the process of coming up with a system to not only dispense and allocate drugs, but to pay for them, that the folks who don't end up paying the higher prices are the Medicare beneficiaries themselves. And so that's what we have to make.
I'm not sure I follow that. Again, this appears to be a case.
I think you do.
No, I don't, and I don't think you do. With all due respect, Mr. Secretary, I don't think you do, because these copay accumulators are not being honored by the PBMs. They're pocketing them. How is that impacting someone else? I don't understand that when it's not impacting the patient, when they're not getting the credit for it. But let me move on. Earlier you said, again, in this minute, I've said here the whole time, and in this hearing you said, I promise you that I'm not going to do anything that impacts patient access to care. This impacts patient access to care.
It does not.
It does. How does it not?
Patients will still have access to the drugs that they need.
If they can't pay for it, that's why they're getting the copay assistance.
Under the Medicare program, they will have help with accessing the drugs that they need. That's unfair for you to say that any patient will be denied a drug.
It's unfair to you to
Give
say
me a
that we're
case-
going to follow
give
the
me a
law
case
when
where
you
a patient
pick
has
and
been
choose which laws you're going to
Congressman,
follow.
Give me a case where a patient has been denied their drugs. Give me a case.
Give me a case where the patient's not been given credit for the copay assistance. All kind of cases, and you say, even though the courts have ruled that that's not right, you're not going to enforce it.
All right, I'm just asking you to prove what you just said. You just said that patients are going to be denied their drugs. Show me the case.
Patients are denied their drugs when they
Show
get
me.
the copay assistance,
Show me.
and they cannot afford it because it's not honored by the PBM.
Show me.
I will get those cases to you, and you get me a situation and show me where you make the decision on what court cases you're going to follow and what court cases you're not going
You
to
will
follow.
abide by the law.
You will abide by the law. You just said you're not going to enforce this one.
Congressman, I just told you, we will abide by the law. And we'll make sure that no patient under Medicare is paying more than they need to for their drugs.
But when it comes to the copay accumulators, you're not going to honor that.
We're going to follow the court rulings wherever we can. I mean,
But you've said that you're not.
however we can. I didn't say that. I just told you, we're going to abide by the law.
You know, I don't understand how everybody else is wrong and you're the only one who's right. I just don't get that.
I'm just asking you to show me the cases where
time has
people are being denied their drugs. Please show me the cases.
You know, Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry, but this is a total failure, and I yield back.
Gentleman yield